Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to our Wednesday, the Leading Change episode this week with Bram the blog. Hey Bram, welcome back.
Hello everyone, thanks.
So today's Wednesday, we're going to talk about a change process you were involved with. And as you go, we want to hear the story of, how it started, what happened during that change process. But as you go through that, also highlight for us the tools, the tips, the tricks, and the techniques you learned back then that you still apply today.
First, I'll give a bit of context. So we're going through an agile evolution, and I think you should always keep evolving. In our company, we came from squads. We used a bit the Spotify terminology, and every squad, every team had their own backlog, team backlog. And inspecting and adapting, that's not the best way to be agile. So one change we did was to evolve into product domains. So no longer just have all these teams with their own team backlog, but let's group around a product.
So let me see if I understood. So the initial state was that every team had their own backlog, and I'm guessing they also had their own product owner.
Yes.
And somehow the product owners need to do the kind of decomposition, if you will, of figuring out what the product wants, and then from that figuring out what my team needs to produce.
Yes, absolutely. And with the added complexity of having a lot of dependencies on different teams working on the same product, for example.
So and at that point you decide, okay, this is not the best way to be agile, because I imagine one big problem is, of course, the dependencies. So
yes,
all the teams need to be in sync for anything to be delivered, and that's very hard to pull off. Yeah. What might be other symptoms that you were trying to get rid of by going from that squad model to whatever you came up with next?
For one, we had teams working on the top of their team backlog that is not really high value. And then we had other teams drowning almost in high value work that couldn't keep up. But yeah, it's their team backlog and it's the other guy's team backlog. They weren't helping each other. They were all focusing on their own team backlog, not necessarily producing the most value for our customers, for example. That's another thing we wanted to get rid of.
Absolutely. So how did you come up with the next step? So I mean, you called it evolution, I guess, on purpose, yes. Right? So you didn't necessarily go from, point A to point B, but rather you started moving towards something different. So what was the thing you tried next?
What we did, and really much respect to our director for putting up with this experiment, was that we used MURAL, the online tool, an online collaboration tool, and had everybody from every team join us on this MURAL with almost a blank canvas on there, but with the suggested product domains. With, instead of having these 17 squads, we're going to go to 7 product domains. And everybody was invited to put down questions to help say, this product should be responsible. This and this component is part of that product. That should be there. That should be there. Move around post-its in between product domains if you think, there could be some dependencies there, or it's not sure where it should go. It was really amazing. And in MURAL, you can turn on or off the pointers. You could see 80 pointers flying around. So a good thing you can turn it off. But that was peak collaboration in my mind, and also peak change management. Everybody had a say. Everybody had a platform to say, I don't think it's a good idea for this reason. I think it's a good idea for that reason. And everybody could provide pros and cons and say, how do we move on? How do we continue? That was really something.
So basically what you were doing is like you had the idea, let's create these product domains. Instead of working from the squad, we work from the product. So the products drive the work rather than the squads define the work. And what you did was, if I understood correctly, is basically you invited everybody to kind of co-create what that product domain, what those product domains would look like, right?
Yes, absolutely. They co-create what it would look like. They would even help and say, okay, the previous squads, most of them worked in components that will now go to that product domain. Here we need to split up people, everything in there. And something else I'd like to suggest every listener to start using, if you haven't already, is to really write down what will stop, what will continue, and what will start. For example, we will stop having team backlogs. We will start having product backlogs. We will continue having dailies, stuff like that. But really make it clear to everybody there, okay, we had this meeting, and then now what? What's actually going to change? Is it still going to be the same after we had all this meeting? No, you have this clear overview. This will stop, this will continue, and this will start. And it's not going to be complete, that list. Stuff will get added, edited, removed. But that's how it works.
And how did you get, like, so I imagine, so you invite people and it's fine to, move Post-its around, but of course, implicitly they are committing to something. So how did you manage that? How did you manage the commitment part?
If we time box the discussion where everybody has that platform to put down their thoughts, and we had follow-up sessions, but at a point in time, okay, the time box is reached, we had the pros and cons, and then it was still the commitment part was that they were able to adapt the way we go forward. And simply by having their say in there, they were a lot more committed to helping this work, making this work, instead of being a saboteur that said, no, I want to stay like it was before because I didn't have a say. This is a ridiculous idea. I had a say, and I heard some counter arguments from my peers, not just my bosses, but from my peers, some pros and cons, and then I got the whole picture and see that, okay, yeah, this is the way forward, and that brought the commitment.
And when you say we had a time box and follow-up sessions, do you mean that you had like that original meeting, and then you had like whatever 1 week or 2 weeks of discussion that would go on, and then at the end of those 2 weeks, people would know from the beginning, at the end of those 2 weeks, whatever was defined was the first iteration? Is that how it
Yes,
works?
absolutely, indeed. So we started, like I said, almost with that blank canvas with some general product domain ideas. I had that interaction with each other, and then after a week we started again, but no longer with a blank canvas, but already with a lot of stuff defined, things we are pretty sure everybody agreed on, things we are still in doubt, and iterated like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, what is important really here is that co-creation is not a process of never-ending discussion.
No.
Co-creation is a process itself that has boundaries, right? Like in the boundary, at least time box is a boundary. What we are talking about is a boundary. So we're talking about product domains. Reshaping the teams in function of the product domains is kind of a constraint that we need to respect. So it wasn't, let's all get together and somehow figure it out. It's like there's clear guidelines, a clear time box, but within those guidelines and time box, the teams can create their own perspective of how it could work, right?
Yes, absolutely. And you could keep discussing a change before actually doing it for years on end, and you'll still have points to discuss. The time box made sure that, okay, let's get most value in that time, and let's start doing, and let's see what works and doesn't work.
And after that, I imagine you had you implemented it after the time box, but then, after that, you had many small changes that were happening over time, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't recognize the current product domains with the last iteration of those meetings that we all work together.
And I think that's also a very important part of any change process, is that it never ends, right? Like we're always adapting. We learn, we adapt, we learn, we adapt.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think, at least in my experience, that helps a lot with the commitment, because people know that I can make a decision because if I'm wrong, I can change it.
Yes.
Right. If we frame the change process as this is the only way it's ever going to work, then people will want to do this never-ending change discussion before taking any action.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's actually something I'm struggling with still in teams, that if anybody puts down a suggestion, they think it's the final word. They don't think this is just the current suggestion. We'll find out and figure out, experience what is a better suggestion. But let us start with this suggestion and adapt.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing that story, Bram.
You're welcome.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role, we'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.